Good evening, friends and neighbors. My name is Terry Carter, and I am a writer and a poet. I also have the awesome privilege of directing elder services here at our beloved West Medford Community Center. Welcome to our 26th monthly presentation of First Friday's Words and Music. 26. Is that just showing off?
Yeah.
So then, this puts us firmly into the third year of a unique concept that has been pretty darn successful. And we're now entering what most consider to be the heart of the winter holidays, fast on the heels of Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving and are getting ready for what's coming down the pike. In the meantime, thanks for braving the wilds of weather in the Bay State and coming out tonight. Beyond this, we are live streaming this evening, and we have virtually every show on Facebook for the folks that can't be with us. So, even as we continue to add to our archive of shows available on Medford Community Media, Somerville Community Access Television, we say to you and everyone out there watching online, welcome to First Fridays in West Medford. So let me begin with a shout out to Yvette Wilkes, who's behind the camera. She faithfully continues to help us produce this community conversation. Kudos also go out to the Cummins Foundation, to Ken and Maura Krause, and the Medford Arts Council for their continued support of this endeavor. Bill Hager, our man on AV, and our intrepid ED, has swapped dance partners just a little bit. Usually he's back there pushing the buttons and knobs, but he's going to sit in with us, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Moving on to tonight's conversation, we have billed our discussion segment as the art of the story. And we've been planning to have a sit down with two of the area's most engaging historians / storytellers, but the road has turned in an unexpected direction. Now, as most of you have experienced at some time in your lives, and as was articulated decades ago by the poet Robert Burns, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. For Words and Music number 26, this is definitely true. First, we've had today's unpleasant weather, and thanks to you all for getting through it. But then we've had the onset of a bad bug for one of our two outstanding panelists for this evening's presentation. So, contrary to advertising, Dee Morris is feeling poorly and won't be with us. So, again, our intrepid man of many hats is stepping in, and we will enjoy his wit and wisdom, Bill Hager. Bill has, through his stints as a teacher, a counselor, and a nonprofit administrator, seen it all and has the stories to prove it. Having made this adjustment, I can now introduce you to the remarkable Sharon Kennedy, who has been telling dozens of her own unique stories, as well as many of West Medford's for decades. She is a storyteller in the classic sense of the word and has presented this classic art all over Massachusetts. She has focused considerable energy on Medford stories and written a highly regarded chronicle of life here in West Medford called Voices of West Medford. We are delighted to have her with us. Please welcome our neighbor from Arlington, Sharon Kennedy.
I think that it's been a while since I moved to West Medford, but you were looking at the book, The Voices of West Medford.
What, you're in the Ville?
I've been here for a long time, Terry.
I knew that. I knew that.
I'm often neglected and I stand corrected. Okay, so I usually like to begin our conversation with a piece of poetry that sets the atmosphere. In this respect, I want to celebrate legacy, lore, and the oral tradition. Hopefully it works for what we want to talk about tonight. So I have a piece for you I called Legacy. It's not for you to tell your own story. That is the burden of your children. They must shoulder this yoke with love and loyalty. And yet, You have not gathered them up and bid them sit before the campfires of their elders. You have not seasoned their meals with the spice of their identity and the savor of their names. How will they learn to walk the walk and talk the talk? How will they learn to tell your stories even as they live out their own? Sons and daughters and heirs, if you didn't smell the burning ash or feel the warmth of the flame on your neck, you don't know. If you didn't revel in the growl of the griot's earthly reply or the trill of the mockingbird's cry, you don't know. If mama was too tired and daddy too long gone to carry the wood, light the spark, and stoke the flames, you don't know. And until the lion cub knows how to tell the pride stories, the hunters will always tell them first. The good book says, train up the child in the way they should go. Will we let them depart from this community of faith and the city on the hill without the master's touch? Without the oil of his anointing and the full measure of his grace? Will we not show them Anansi's clever ways, Popo and Fifina's journey, Mufaro's beautiful daughters, the people who could fly, and the wonders of Wakanda, and Songalulo's new takis? The prophet says he will encourage fathers and their children to return. But how will they know the way home if no map charts the seas, measures the roads, cites the peaks and valleys, and names each forest despite the thickening trees? Will the burden of the elder stories be too heavy for the children? Will they care to carry? Will they dare to tarry? Will they linger at the foot of the griot? Will they hunger for the wisdom of the sage? We must put them on the page, where hard work earns the man his wage, where power is measured by God's own gauge, where miracles scoff at the wand of a mage. We must share with them the truth that is loyal and fierce like Naomi and Ruth, that doesn't wait for the confessional booth, that has the bite of the panther's tooth. This is the gift of legacy, where a glorious past sets the captives free and the candle's light beckons liberty. Sons and daughters and heirs, I bid you sit before the campfires of your elders. Hear their stories, gather up their stones, and build up your strength. They will show you Anansi's clever ways, Popo and Fifina's journey, Mufaro's beautiful daughters, the people who could fly, the wonders of Wakanda, and Songololo's new takis. Soon you will be the herald. Write these things down on the tablets of your spirit. Let them put a running in your feet. With each quickening step, you repel the arrows of the hunter with the shield of abiding faith. You capture the flags of your enemies and gather up their spoils. You remain the lions of the pride, and your tails will always be your children's bread. You will never abandon the community of faith, though you build 1,000 cities on a hill, drawing wondrous strength from the master's touch as the oil of his anointing fills your clay jars with his grace. Thank you very much. This conversation is going to take two distinct forms. We will begin with a traditional Q&A, exploring storytelling and related topics. We will then take some time to share individual stories with you. Is that okay with everyone?
Sure.
Okay, all right, very good. Let's begin. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Sharon, if you don't mind.
All right.
Okay, so tell us what you think is at the heart of traditional storytelling. How do you begin to develop a story that you plan to tell?
Well, what is at the heart of traditional storytelling is a wonderful quotation that somebody in Ireland said long, long ago when he was asked if the TV had replaced him. And he said, yes, I think the TV has replaced me. I can't stand next to the television and tell a story because nobody will listen. And it was a depressing conversation. But then when it was over, some of the members of the audience or the other people who were around said, Yes, but the TV can't replace you, and actually an outside storyteller couldn't even replace you because nobody knows our stories and knows us the way that you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you're our storyteller.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. So, how do you begin to develop a story that you plan to tell?
It depends whether I went to Ghana and collected it in person.
All right.
That's a pretty exciting thing to do, right? I mean, that's amazing that I can say I even did that.
Absolutely.
That I've gone to Ghana, I've gone to Ireland, I've gone to Ecuador, and I've collected stories. So in that case, I have to say, how am I going to take this story that I adore, because I adore that culture, but how am I going to bring it back and tell it to some 5th graders here? Or maybe even harder. How am I going to tell it? How am I going to adapt it to tell it to adults in the United States? Sharon, I have to say to myself, you love this story. That's because you're head over heels in love with this culture. But you've got to make it relevant to them. What parts are you going to use? What parts are you going to throw out? Then there's the horrible, fearsome task of rehearsing. So rehearsing is a very long story. Fortunately, I can get into sort of a meditative state when rehearsing. Otherwise, I would hate it beyond belief, and many people despise it. But you go to rehearse, for example, my story called The Strike for Bread and Roses, 1912, which is 1 hour long. So the first thing you do is, oh no, why did I ever say that I'll do that for next week?
Wow.
I've got to rehearse the story, which is 1 hour long. Then you take it in pieces. And you do this part of it, the intro. Then you do the time when you become one of the people in 1912. Then you do the ending. Then you say, okay, so it's not so horrible. And then you go down and have a very, very big, delicious cup of very strong Irish tea. Revive yourself and say, well, maybe a piece of chocolate would be good with that. And then you go back to rehearsing.
Fantastic. Wow, that's illuminating. Okay. Bill, I want to switch the conversation over to you for a second. What was it about being able to tell a good story that can make for a great classroom experience?
Well, first, I'm going to counter a little bit of what Sharon said in all due respect. Working with kids, kids are exposed to and have access to all the visual images that I never had as a kid. It's a remarkable thing. But if I can tell a good story, and I can tell a story in a meaningful way, they will be rapt. They will be there. If I make eye contact, if I use my voice correctly. And every culture has learned from stories. And what's amazing is it's such a human reaction that, similar to what Sharon's saying, is that I can tell a story of African origin. And there's questions about appropriation, I understand that, but if it's a good story, kids today in Medford will sit there and listen to that story. They'll hear it. There are certain themes that run throughout culture, runs cross culture.
Universal, yeah.
Anansi, Coyote, Bugs Bunny. Think about it. The trickster is in all of those.
Absolutely.
From Burbank, California to Ghana to the American Southwest. Kids respond to those archetypes, and they will internalize that so much more than a flat, remember this thing.
I'll have to answer that.
Okay, all right, well,
So,
go back at it.
so the thing is, Bill, that I tell to 150 children at a time. And if I don't really make that story just right for them, with all the most wonderful intentions and everything lovely that you just said, ain't gonna fly. You really have got to, I have to be rehearsed within an inch of my life for those 150. Some of the children sitting in front of me, and I used to do this, I probably used to do about 9 shows per week. Some of the children sitting in front of me are the special ed children, and they're having a lot of trouble attending. Some of the children sitting in front of me speak many other languages besides English, and English isn't their first, and they're like, is she going to get to the part that I understand anything? Then there's the teachers standing at the back talking to each other. Not really all that helpful. And I'm in a freezing cold, huge, barren school cafeteria. And man, those stories have got to be just perfect. I can't just tell them any old way, the way I brought them home from Ghana or from Ireland. They've got to be perfect.
Oh, and I agree. I think it has to be a story well told. And on the other side of that, I was...
It's a tennis match, okay.
No, because I'm agreeing with you. It has to be well told. When I was teaching and when I was supervising teachers, what I absolutely detested was the opposite of what you're saying. Is when a teacher would sit with a picture book and a freaking tape recorder, and it would say, "And this is what happened next." Beep. Turn the page. So the human, and so that she could understand why the kids were like, "Oh, Velcro shoes are cool." Because she wasn't engaging and it wasn't taking time to tell the story.
Absolutely.
So I'm agreeing is that not only has to be a good story, but it has to be a story well told. And that's not a given.
Right.
But I also encourage more people to tell stories because more people can learn the art.
Absolutely.
And people get self-conscious. And touching on what Terry said earlier, in my own life, my grandfather, who I adored, and who was much older than my grandmother, and so he was going to leave first. And I begged him to tell his stories. And my grandma would go, "Oh no, Bill, Bill doesn't want to hear that. The kids don't want to hear." Yes, I want to hear your stories.
Okay.
So I'm on a mission to get people to tell more stories.
Absolutely.
When I teach my classes for Lesley University, I teach them all over the country because they have all these outreach sites. So I'm in, Green Bay, Wisconsin, most unfortunately in this kind of weather.
Sure.
Then they send me to Sacramento when it's July. But in any case, all over the country, I am teaching the art of storytelling so that teachers will tell stories to their children in the classroom.
Fantastic.
And their favorite part, almost 9 to 1, the favorite part of the teachers, in terms of what I'm teaching them, is collecting from their own family.
Okay.
They love it, and sometimes they start now on a lifelong journey
Yes.
of collecting from their own family.
Right. As well they should. So you've been an admirer and a recorder of life and the personality of this community for some time. How did you come to see this story as one that you wanted to tell?
All because of dog counts.
Okay.
It all begins with dog counts. Once upon a time I was living in Arlington,
Mm-hmm.
25 years ago.
Well.
And so, when I was in Arlington, I started reading about this man named Doc Counts, and I fantasized from what I read that he had a house absolutely filled with history. Turns out I wasn't all that off. But the main thing he had done was he had collected
That's right.
oral histories from this community.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to meet him, and he was actually in the hospital dying at the time that I moved here. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I could continue this work because I heard that there had been quite a diaspora and people from this community now lived in every state of the United States, including Puerto Rico, as Whitfield used to tell me, because that's where, right? That's where his son is. And so I thought, let me see if I can collect from the people who are elderly, because those memories are going to get lost pretty soon, and that's what started me.
Fantastic. And you collected a lot of those memories and voices of West Medford. And for any of you that have not seen this book or don't know of it, it is still available, and we can give you information on how you can get hold of it toward the end of the broadcast. Okay, so we've all been enriched by what you've done and what you continue to do. I do want to say that. Bill, so you're kind of a unique case, and I'm gonna say why in a minute.
My wife tells me that
All
frequently.
the time. What was it that called you out about the story of this community and the opportunity to become part of it? In that, what keeps you coming down from Wells, Maine, to serve as the WMCC's executive director?
Well, let me first say that people always look at the travel, but you know, it can take you an hour and a half to get from here to downtown Boston, so it's relative. Yeah, it's a relative thing. This is an amazing community, and I have the luxury of coming in every day and under the gaze of these people up on the wall here, and the fact that this community created was a incubator for so many amazing people who went through the 50s and 60s of this, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s of this country, and came through it with such grace and with such humor.
Yes.
And the fact that these stories, talk about storytelling, that the stories of those lives are on the wall here,
Yes.
is remarkable. I think I'm privileged to have a chance to come in and to be in this setting. I often tell people, they say, you know, what's that? What is it about West Medford? I say, well, listen, this is a good 3-beer story. This is not something, you can't talk about West Medford or the community center. It's at least 3 beers, if not a picture or two, to get through that storytelling. And it's rich, it's deep, and like a lot of things, you keep on finding new angles. You keep on finding new stories. So it's again, I look at it as a privilege to be able to be just a small part of the, and also the community center has such a tremendous history.
Yes.
That I am to play a small part in the legacy of this organization, again, is a tremendous privilege for me.
Very good. Sharon, I want to read you a quote from a Medford Transcript article you were featured in back in January of last year. You stated, in the last 6 to 8 years, people haven't been thinking about storytelling at all. You said people are not bringing young children to performances and are not looking and hoping that there's a storytelling program in their library anymore. This lack of interest in the storyteller's art, what do you attribute it to?
This is the sad part of the story that really nobody ever wants to hear me talk about, but I'll do it anyway. What seemed to start the problem was MCAS. So as soon as there were standardized tests in the schools, it dovetailed perfectly with not enough money in the schools. And so between the two, storytelling disappeared from the schools. So I was in the schools something like 4 days a week doing 2 or 3 shows per day for about 150 children at a time. More if I would say yes, but I said no, because I was always looking for the intimate if I could get it with 150. There are no storytellers in the schools anymore. There are no poets in the schools anymore. There are no dancers. There are very few musicians, and there are very few visual artists. It is over. It is very, very sad. The teachers themselves are under so much pressure to have their kids not be compared disfavorably with the other 4th grade kids.
Teaching to the test.
They all teach to the test, even if they say they don't, because they're under so much pressure. So that did in the schools. And then the libraries around about the same time, and then it got worse in 2008, had no money. And so I used to be in the February and April school vacation weeks, I would do 3 Boston Public Libraries per day. I have no work whatsoever, and none of my peers do either. Then the killer is that in general, this is a soundbite culture now, and children are all completely on their devices. Whatever devices, you can their phones and their Xboxes. That's all they're doing, and the parents have completely forgotten that they should be begging the libraries and the museums and the historical associations and all the places. I worked full-time for 35 years and made my living doing nothing but telling stories and teaching for Salem State, Leslie, and Wheelock because I taught storytelling. The parents are not saying, how can there not be any storytelling? We want storytelling. The libraries are not looking for any storytellers. It's a sad and tragic story.
Okay.
Bill, can I add a little bit to that?
Please.
Because I'm 100% in agreement, and I would extend that to the real key age to keep storytelling alive is the preschoolers. And when you see parents with preschoolers keeping them occupied with a screen, rather than on an informal, not a professional, but an informal way, how many stories got told while you're on a long drive and you're in the back seat and you had to be entertained by your parents telling a story? That reaches the brain in a very meaningful way. Setting an iPad in the back seat with showing cartoons doesn't have the same impact on the kid's brain. So we also know that with the very young kids, if we tell them stories and make that eye contact, make that connection, they are more literate, they read more books, they are more even-tempered, they have less behavioral problems if we tell them stories. And people look at me like I'm crazy saying, that's a pretty long leap, Bill, behavior problems and storytelling. But there is good evidence, there is dramatic evidence with young
Very
children.
good evidence.
Give them stories, human stories, tell through the human voice, and they will be healthier human beings as they grow. And it makes me a little crazy that we're losing that piece. I agree that the older kids are very difficult, but even get them
Older
started.
kids actually are not difficult. We are not giving them a chance.
I would agree.
If I had them here right now and told them a story that's exactly the right story for their age level, they would be totally into it. But no one's looking for it anymore. It isn't even the fault of the kids.
The only thing I'll say, and then I'll get back to Terry, but for those who work adjacent to the education system, when the No Child Left Behind started stimulating on the stuff, we refer to it as a No Child Left Unharmed. Because
I think that what's going to happen is we're going to raise a generation of robots. And if they aren't completely robots, the next generation will be.
Amen.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Heavy
we
stuff.
definitely. This is a very, very dynamic conversation. So I think I'm still going to try to do this. So I'm going to play a quick game of word association, and we don't have an awful lot of time left, so I have a few words for each of you. What I'd like you to do is to I'll give the word to you, you give me your immediate impression, and then explain why. Okay?
But you realize, Terry, you're talking to people who self-define as storytellers.
Well, yeah.
So I can spend 5 minutes saying hello.
I get you. Okay. So Sharon, here's your first word. Authenticity.
Traditional storytelling.
Okay. There it is. Craft.
Practice.
Hero.
Heroine.
Ah, touche. Music.
I know.
Close to everything.
Okay.
That's 3 words.
Absolutely, but I know what you're talking about because you and I go the same place on this. All right, so if you could have lunch with anyone you chose to, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Wow.
My goodness. I probably there's 20 people, but Martin Luther King, because I missed him by about 5 minutes. I had an interview set up with him, and I'm totally blowing a 30-minute story that I usually tell, except a half a dozen of you here have heard it.
Right.
So I had a lot of you have heard it. I had an interview set up with him. Paul, what was the date?
1968.
1968 in April 4th. I had an interview, and he didn't come to that interview because he was
Lorraine Motel,
killed.
Memphis, Tennessee. Bill, lunch. Who and why?
I've actually thought about this.
Okay.
And if I had one choice, oddly enough, it'd be Thomas Jefferson. Because he was obviously brilliant, obviously a very progressive thinker, but this slavery thing.
Ah, okay.
I really want to know. He was a religious man. He was, again, a forward thinker. He was progressive. He was brilliant. How does he reconcile the whole slavery thing? I just have no idea.
Wow.
I'm just fascinated by that conflict.
Wow, I'd like to be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
He's got some explaining to do.
Yeah, he does. I almost hate that I need to close out this portion of the conversation, but I want to get to what is coming next because I'm really excited about it. Each of us is going to have an opportunity to share the storyteller's art as we know it. I'm going to start, and I'm going to do it from the framework of being a poet. If I don't write it down, I can't say it. So, Sharon, as a more classical performer, I'm looking forward to that. And Bill, as a wearer of many hats, from Detroit, Michigan, through Wells, Maine, to West Medford, Massachusetts. That ought to be an interesting journey. Okay, so we're going to shift things around just a little tiny bit. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to come to Sharon, and then we're going to go to Bill. Okay, not ideal, but I'll make it work. They shoot black boys, don't they? A tragedy in 5 acts. Black boys spied from the cruiser seat. No real crime, just walking the street. Always wary of prowling heat, terrorizing their urban beat. Wrong place, wrong time for them to meet. Vicious cycle about to repeat. Bullets fly toward running feet. Shots rain down like hail and sleet. Body slumps over with no heartbeat. Covered quick with a rubber sheet. A cancerous violence, whole and complete. Removed from justice, surgically neat. Officials expressing regret, then retreat. Community mourns death and defeat. Asphalt altars rise, bittersweet. Makeshift shrines adorn the concrete. It's like they're nothing more than meat shot down like frightened deer to eat. They shoot black boys, don't they? We can't escape the daily patrol that chills our lives and the lives they stole. Candles and notes by the telephone pole expressing our family's tortured soul. How do we fill this deepening hole? Is staying alive such a lofty goal? This public assault is taking its toll. Scary voices as dark as coal never seek to calm and console. A president's outbreaks coax and cajole as Twitter minions spew vitriol. The internet haters steadily troll as senators suck on the public dole and hide in plain sight from their public role. They shoot black boys, don't they? Beyond the movie and TV themes, the Facebook chats, emojis, and memes, this is more real than it ever seems, plunging our community into extremes. Death in our nightmares, death in our dreams, brown kids caught in police high beams, black men subject to violent schemes as squads band together like mafia teams. Protesters' marches are shown on live streams as onlookers weep and America screams. A cauldron of race just simmers and steams. Invoking religion only blasphemes, and the legal solution never redeems. So fires rage and hostile regimes as the neighborhood comes apart at the seams. The police state builds with iron beams, and many deny that the badge still gleams. One man rebukes what another esteems, and the fate of our children haunts our dreams. They shoot black boys, don't they? A question asked, a statement made, another mother's hopes betrayed, as men in blue make bullets cascade. And even as their guilt is weighed, they get death duty. They still get paid. It wasn't even a legal raid, but another son to rest is laid. His hulking presence emerged from the shade. They saw the thug that is always portrayed. His actions made them so afraid that his keys looked like a razor blade. All training was lost in a cruel charade by roguish cops gone renegade. Yes, that's the way the game is played, by a public servant's masquerade, by a scared police officer's fusillade. This is racism on parade. This is the curse of bias displayed as another black boy to rest is laid. They shoot black boys, don't they? We're all waking up to a tragic newsreel where pools of red blood begin to congeal. Beyond the precinct and far afield, assault-style ordnance is what they'll wield. Stockpiling mags with ultra-high yield, Confederate banners no longer conceal alt-right militias, supremacist zeal, courting race war as a fruit to peel. Wives and kids eat the same happy meal. Question, to what altar do they kneel? How do they bring Christian faith to heal? What strange voice are they hearing squeal? What lack of conscience does this reveal? How do you think this makes us feel? This calculated deadly ordeal, historically bound but so surreal, and the noose replaced by the Glock and steel. The new Klan riding and taking the wheel, rubber stamped by a president's seal. And they shoot black boys, don't they? I'm in that place right now, so I don't mean to be negative, but sometimes that's where we live. This piece is dedicated to the folks that lived through the firestorms in California last year and that are probably going to be dealing with the same thing this year and maybe for every year to come. It's called Fireside Chat. Standing in the middle of Misery Street, mournfully regarding a pile of charred wood, ash, and damp soot. My home was here, my memories and my things, my comfort and my peace. There is nothing to grab hold of. The fire was all-consuming. The devastation was absolute. The aftermath is yet unfolding. My heart was here, my letters and my books, my compass and my true north. Standing in the middle of smoldering ruins, blocks and blocks of scorched earth, wrecked and ruined. 500-year-old oak and elm trees reduced to blackened bits of charcoal. There are no smiling faces to kiss, no kittens to cuddle, no babies to tickle, no neighbors we know by name and need, not numbers, statistics, community. I can't find a hug that feels right. The story has no happy ending. My heaven was here, my lesser angels and my faith, my roots and my piece of sky. Standing with my daughters and my dog in a high school gym 3 counties away, we are the lucky ones. We heard the reports and made haste, choked down the smoke and made haste, saw the blazing menace and made haste. Couldn't gather much more than the clothes on our backs, some stuffies and a tablet. Crazy that I had just digitized all the pictures, our lives on a thumb drive, on a keychain in my pocket. Standing for the lost and the fallen. There was no fighting this. Containment simply meant on to the next inferno. Rescue has become recover and identify. Hope has become compassion and sympathy. Tears are the only water in abundant supply. Our friends suffered too. Good friends that won't ever come home, even if there was a home to come to. There was no escape, only rebar, rope lines and resistance. Despite the heroic efforts of gallant legions. Hell came, saw, and conquered. The rains came only to mock us. Standing at the corner of burnt visions and broken dreams, nothing that we built remains, not one thing. $1 million mini mansions and modest capes incinerated. The observers come to assess and plan, then leave, shaking their heads and wringing their hands. Only the true servants stay. They pray with us. They hold us tight. They help us to grieve. This was their place too. Neighborhood is in the heart. We are still standing. We are still standing. Thank you. All right, that's my piece. I am going to defer to our next storyteller. She is the dynamic Sharon Kennedy. Sharon, will be just a second.
Sure. Hi, Kathleen.
Bill, I have 24.
I'm just gonna do one thing myself, which is chapstick.
Well, I'm sorry.
The story that I'm going to tell is about a person that many of you sitting in front of me knew very well. I was so lucky that I got to interview her at length on several, maybe I should even say many occasions. And I had her permission to tell her story. This is only one little tiny piece of her story. Once upon a time, in Winchester, Massachusetts, there was a little African-American girl growing up. It was 1928 and she was 7 years old, and her name was Dorothy Elizabeth Tucker. She lived on Harvard Street, and she was in an area of maybe 10 blocks of all African-American families. This was the African-American section of Winchester. However, way over on the west side, in the very wealthiest section of Winchester, there were African-Americans who lived there too. They lived in the rich white people's houses. They worked as maids and cooks and butlers and chauffeurs. Two very distinct communities. However, on Sundays, the two communities combined. And where they combined was at church. The church where Dorothy Elizabeth Tucker's grandfather was minister. And that is how Dorothy Elizabeth happened to meet Miss Lee. Miss Lee lived with Miss Bunting, two maiden ladies, living in Winchester Chambers on the wealthiest west side, wealthiest part of Winchester, the west side of Winchester. Miss Bunting was a white old maid, and Miss Lee was a black old maid. And they lived in the apartment owned or rented by Miss Bunting, and they had come up together from Virginia. And now Miss Lee was a very big part of Grandfather Tucker's church. Well, she decided she was going to start a sunshine band. Sunshine band was for children in those days, and she had 24 African American children in the basement of that church, and she taught them Bible verses and psalms and songs, and she taught them to do right and be right. And she also took them on field trips. She took them on the train out of Winchester because she felt that the children should see other things besides Winchester. So she took them to the Museum of Science, and she took them to the Museum of Fine Arts. And that was some of what she showed them. And then Dorothy Elizabeth was so lucky. She was probably the only kid who didn't have any brothers and sisters. Maybe it was for that reason. Maybe it was because she formed a special bond with Miss Lee. But every couple of months, she was allowed to visit Miss Lee at the Winchester Chambers, just the two of them. And her mother would let her choose her favorite dress and possibly her patent leather shoes. And her mother would braid her hair and put ribbons in. And then she'd take her to the bus stop. And Dorothy Elizabeth would take that bus out of one world into another world when she got to the west side of Winchester. And she only had to walk a half a block to get to Winchester Chambers, this beautiful apartment building. She looked at the marble steps in the front going to each apartment. And then she went around as she had been told to do. And she walked up the wooden steps in the back to the apartment. She rang the doorbell, she opened the door, and she looked up, and there was Miss Lee standing at the top of the stairs. And she remembered when Miss Lee first came to the church, her uncle said, "A little bit aristocratic, don't you think?" And then her grandfather answered, "Ah, but she has a godliness within." And so Dorothy Elizabeth would run up the stairs, and what a wonderful 2 or 3 hours they had together. They would play games, they would read books, they always had cookies and tea in beautiful china teacups. Sometimes they would water the plants, sometimes they would make fancy pats of butter, and Dorothy Elizabeth loved helping to set the table for when Miss Bunting was going to come home. Miss Bunting went for her chauffeur-driven ride every afternoon, and then she would come home and she would need her tea. And sometimes a half dozen white ladies would come for tea as well. And so Miss Lee would let Dorothy Elizabeth help get ready by setting the table with china plates and china teacups and gleaming silver and beautiful candlesticks with beautiful candlestick holders. And usually, Miss Lee had time to get Dorothy Elizabeth to the bus stop, but on one occasion, she was still there when, for some reason, Miss Bunting came home with her chauffeur a little early, and so did all the other white ladies, and they all came up the stairs. And so, on this occasion, Dorothy Elizabeth got to see Miss Lee putting on a crisp white apron over her clothing and a little white hat on her head. And she saw Miss Lee starting to take all the ladies' coats and put them in the closet and checking to make sure if everything was right on the table. And then Dorothy Elizabeth waved goodbye and she went to the bus herself. And then when she got home that night and she was having supper with her mother, she was all excited. And she said, "Mother, I know what I want to do when I grow up. I know exactly what I want to do. I want to live in Winchester Chambers and work for a rich white lady like Miss Bunting, and I want to always be around the gleaming silver and the beautiful china teacups and the candlesticks. This is what I want to do, Mother. And Dorothy Elizabeth's mother got a really terrible lump in her throat. But she swallowed it, painful though it was. And she hugged Dorothy Elizabeth closer. And she said, "Honey, you are aware that Miss Bunting, well, it's her apartment and her world and her friends, and Miss Lee works for her as a maid. Dorothy Elizabeth, this isn't what I want for you when you grow up. This is not what Miss Lee wants for you either. Dorothy Elizabeth, when you're 18 years old and you finish high school, you're going to go down to that train in the center of Winchester, that same train that takes you on those field trips with Miss Lee, and you're going to go into Boston, or, I don't know, you might have to go even further, but you're going to go to college. You are going to go to college, Dorothy Elizabeth. And after those 4 years in college, you're going to graduate and you're going to make something out of yourself." And Dorothy Elizabeth did. And there was a little special message for Yvette, who's standing in front of me, because she just happened to tell me today that her twins both graduated from college in the last couple of months.
That was wonderful. Really, really wonderful. So I'm going to give the floor now to Bill Hager. And he's going to give you a few minutes as well. He got a banjo. I don't know what that's all about. But he's the man right now.
Thank you. You know, it's kind of fun being on this side of the camera. I might get used to it. So, those were both great, and I'm not even going to try to compete with that. But it's sometimes fun to consider. Sharon's pillow. Okay, we're going to try this. Anyways, we're going to try it a little lighter, because sometimes lighter is good, and sometimes storytelling is a lighter side. So I have this, and people say, "Oh, I didn't know you played the banjo." I don't. But and this is a long neck banjo, and it has 3 extra frets, so you can play in extra keys. So it's like, I can play in the key of A. Key of A. I can play in the key of B. By gosh, key of D. I can play in the key of G. Gee whiz! Key of G. I can play in the key of F. Oh, key of F. So the idea is, I like to have the banjo in front of me when I do storytelling, because I tell some really, really bad jokes. And it's nice to have this nice large piece of steel and wood in front of you when you're doing that. And this is a banjo, long neck banjo, that I use when I tell tall tales. And when I'm telling short stories, I can use this. Anyways, I'm not going to keep you guys long because we have some really good music, but I did want to do a story. And I'm going to do a story on the other side of all the seriousness, because family stories and stories about family within families and the like have value too. And sometimes it's valuable to keep your family close at heart, even if they're far away. And as I told you earlier on about my grandfather, who wouldn't share his stories, I made a point of saying that when my grandchildren are born, can't talk and play at the same time. But I'm a better talker than a player, so I'm going to do that. That when my grandchildren came around, that I would share stories. So this is one that is for my grandchildren. This is for Elma and James. My grandma, she bakes cookies. My grandpa, he bakes bread. My grandma, she wears an apron. My grandpa puts silly things on his head. My grandma and grandpa start mixing a bowl, and better be certain that bowl has no holes. Now, what kind of cookies should my grandma make? Oatmeal and raisin? Chocolate chip? I think that maybe the chip would make me flip. What kind of bread should my grandpa make? I think the kind that makes good toast. I think the toast would be the most of the bread he should bake. Once everything's mixed up and it's time to bake, it's awfully hard to wait for all the time it takes. Once everything's cooked, we'll need to let it cool. Oh, they look so good. Grandma must have gone to cookie school. Now it's time to wrap them up and mail them straight away, off far away to my house, though it take a whole week and a whole day. So, here are their goodies. You can even give them names because they are for Elma and for Lily and Andrew, and for Elma and for James. And the other piece is that you know what they call a banjo player with perfect pitch? You can get into the dumpster without hitting either of the sides. Perfect pitch in the dumpster. Thank you very much.
So I don't know everything, but I do know that Dee Morris was not coming with two banjos.
It took me and two banjos to make up for one D1.
All right. So there you have it, folks. Another great words presentation goes into the storybooks. So as we close out the conversation segment for this Friday, folks, can we have a robust round of applause for another great lady of the Mystic Valley, Sharon Kennedy? And for our own new teller of tales here in West Medford, Bill Hager. And obviously I want to thank you all for paying attention and being a part of this. Now we're going to take a small pause for the cause, and I'll be back to give you all the information you need to have about tonight's outstanding musical entertainment. Stretch your legs, refresh yourselves. There's water in the back and coffee, obviously. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. I'm hoping that Sharon might have brought a few copies of her book, Voices of West Medford. But if she doesn't, we can always give you the information you need on how to get it. As it would make a great holiday gift for anybody that's in a West Medford state of mind. I also have books available from my 4, and it's going on 5 now, volume collection of brown skin poetry. See me if you're interested after we close. I just want to give you some information about some things that are going on here at the community center. Tomorrow, you can come out for Lakota Youth State's annual cookie walk and pet and child photography session, and that's beginning at 11 a.m. So if you've got children or pets that you need to have a holiday photograph taken, you can do that. Or if you just want to come because there'll be cookies here, you can do that too. And then on Sunday, December 8th, Medford School Committee member Kathy Creets is hosting a free holiday fun day. It'll be drop-in from 1 to 3 p.m. and you can come and create sugar cookie-shaped paper cutout magnets. All materials provided, including glue, glitter, and sequins. I'll still be getting them off the floor Monday, but I digress. Then from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m., you can take your paper crafting in a totally different direction as the WMCC's Origami Club does a special holiday program. For those of you that don't know, origami is the Japanese art of paper folding, cranes and dragons and such things. Next week, December 11th, this is real important, folks, join Mayor-elect Brianna Lungo-Kern's transition team for one of several public listening sessions that they will be hosting across the city. This occasion happens here at the WMCC from 6:30 to 8, and it will be on general topics and an open discussion. So you can bring any issues, concerns that you may have about the community, and that information will be forwarded after the session to the oncoming mayor. Lastly, join board member Nancy Leslie and spoken word artist Michelle Richardson, aka Michelle La Poetica, as Michelle and her crew, Density Soul Cypher, returns for a celebration of the winter solstice, that's S-O-U-L stis, featuring dope beats, fresh rhythms, and new rhymes for the season of wonder. It starts at 8 p.m. on Friday, December 13th, and will feature all kinds of 100% good stuff.
I think it's 7.
7?
I think it's 7.
Okay, I took that right off the flyer. So
And it's free.
it is free, F-R-E-E. Okay, we are now back to our regularly scheduled programming. So if you remember, the last time we got together, we were treated to the serious groove and social push of the aforementioned Michelle La Poetica's Density Soul Cypher group. Kudos again to Nancy Leslie for allowing us to try a different flavor of entertainment here on First Fridays. It was kind of epic. Tonight, we're back in our lane, so to speak. Just a bit, as we happily bring to the floor a singer whose work resonates all over the state and who is in popular demand practically every weekend. A legitimate star on the New England music scene, Miss Athene Wilson. Mrs. Athene Wilson. Athene is a 3-time Boston Urban Music Award winner. People around the world have enjoyed her soulful and melodic sounds in jazz clubs, concerts, and special events. She is a consummate professional with a show that will keep you engaged and entertained. If you're out there on Facebook Live listening in, you're in for a treat. Athene and I go back a ways, and I am thrilled to bring her here, as well as her accompanist, the inestimable Rollins Ross, to the WMCC. Besides being the owner of the area's, being one of the area's most sought-after piano players, Rollins Ross is the owner of Ross Music Company, a broadcasting, media, and music and media production company. Let's give a warm West Medford welcome to Athene Wilson and Rollins Ross.
Thank you so much. Terry, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
We heard wonderful stories. I was so engaged. Wow. Brought me right there. Well, I do some sort of storytelling too, in song. So I'm just going to engage you for a little while. I hope you stay with me. Now, I must warn you, my music is eclectic, so I do a lot of forms, okay? So a lot of genres. So we'll try to make it make sense. All right, this one, first one, Aretha Franklin did this one, and I love it. So here we go. Daydreaming and I'm thinking of you. 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 He's the kind of guy you say, hey baby, let's get away, let's go somewhere far, where I don't care. Oh. till death do you part. Oh yeah, you see, I wanna be what he wants, when he wants, and whenever he needs me. When he's feeling lonely and lost out, they'll be there to please him. I'm loving him a little bit more each day. Turns me right on when I hear him say, hey baby, let's get away, let's go somewhere far. Baby, can we? Well, I don't care, I don't care. Ooh. Hey baby, let's get away, let's go somewhere far. Baby, can we? Well, I don't care, I don't care. You see, I wanna be what he wants, when he wants, and whenever he needs me. When he's feeling lonely and lost, I'll be there to please him. Loving him a little bit more each day. Turns me right on when I hear him say, ooh. Come on, Rob. Yeah. Mr. Rollins Rock. Hey baby, let's get away, let's go somewhere far. Baby, can we? I don't care where, I don't care. Ooh. Hey baby, let's get away, let's go somewhere far. Baby, can we? I don't care where. You see, I wanna be what he wants, when he wants, and whenever he needs me. When it's feeling lonely and lost, I'll be there to please him. Loving him a little bit more each day. Turns me right on when I hear him say, daydreaming and I'm thinking of you. 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 So many things going on in the world today. Marvin Gaye wrote this one, and it still rings true, right?
Yeah.
Why? What's going on, people? I just want to know. Mother, mother, far too many of you cry. And brother, 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 oh, far too many of you die. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Ooh. Father, 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 we don't need to escalate. War is not the answer. Only love can conquer hate. You know Oh boy. I'm just not prepared. It came too quickly. Anyway, Donny Hathaway wrote this one, and I love it. Well, can help me with the. You can reach me by trailway. You can reach me on an airplane. You can reach me with your mind. You can reach me by caravan. Cross the desert like an Arab man. Whoa. I don't care how you get here, just get here if you can. You can reach me by sailboat, climb a tree and swing road to road, take a sled and slide down slow into these arms of mine. You can jump on a speedy coat, cross the water in a blaze of hope. I don't care how you get here, just get here if you can. There are hills and mountains between us, always something to get over. If I had my way, surely you would be closer. I need you closer. If I had my way, surely you would be closer. You can windsurf into my life, take me up on a carpet ride. You can make it in a big balloon, but you better make it soon. You can reach me by caravan, cross the desert like an airman. Whoa. I don't care how you get here, just get here if you can. Get here if you can. I don't care how you get here, just get here if you can. All right. Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it still is news. Your mama may have, your papa he may have. God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Oh, yes. Well, the strong get smaller while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets don't ever make the grade. Your mama may have it, your papa he may have. God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Money you've got, lots of friends, and they crowding around your door. When the spending ends and all your money's gone, they don't come around no more. Rich relations give, crust of bread and such. You can help yourself, you can help yourself, but please don't take too much. Your mama may have, your papa he may have. God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Yeah, talk to the brothers. Lots of friends, and they crowding around your door. When the spending ends, and all your money's gone, they don't come around no more. Rich relations give a crust of bread and such. You can help yourself, but please don't you take too much, no. Your mama may have, papa he may have. God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Yeah.
That's it.
All right. What's the time looking like? We're good?
We're good.
We're good. All right. He's gonna put me to work. A lonely room, just me and you. I feel so lost, don't know what I'm gonna do. So what if I choose the wrong thing to do? I'm so afraid of disappointing you. So I need to talk to you. and ask you for your guidance, especially today when my life is so cloudy. Lord, guide me on till I'm sure, and I'll open up my heart. Oh, my hopes and dreams are fading fast. I'm so burnt out. Don't know if my strength's gonna last, so I'm crying out, crying out to you, Lord. I know you're able to see me through. I need to talk to you and ask you for your guidance, especially today, when my life is so cloudy. Lord, guide me until I'm sure, and I'll open up my heart. Oh, so show me how to do things your way. Don't let me make the same mistakes over and over again. Your will be done, and I'll be the one to make sure that it's carried out. 'Cause indeed, there is no doubt I need to talk to you and ask you for your guidance, especially today, when my life is so cloudy. Lord, guide me until I'm sure, and I'll open up my heart. Oh, all I need is one word, one word, one word, and I'll open up my heart. Oh, I just need, all I need is one word, and I'll open up my heart. Oh. Really? My voice has been in the basement. He wants to push it. All right, we're gonna give you some blues. How's that?
Good.
Happy blues. Is there such a thing? All right. Can we clap? There we go. Yes, oh. Roll with me, Henry. Roll with me, Henry. Roll with me, Henry. Roll with me, Henry. You got to roll with me, Henry. Roll with me, Henry. You got to roll with me, Henry. Roll with me, Henry. You got to roll with me, roll with me. Oh, night long. Yeah. Now, I'm gonna Kansas City. Kansas City, here I come. Y'all not feeling? Yes. I said I'm going to Kansas City now. Hey, Kansas City, here I come. Oh, yes, guess what? They got some good looking men there. I think I'm gonna get me one. Maybe Tuesday, Saturday. Every day, every day, every day, I got the blues. Every day, baby. Every day, I got the blues. Yeah. Oh, well, if you see me worried, baby, it's you I hate to lose. Come on, let it breathe now. Talk to the man. One more time. Mr. Rollins, guess what? You see the night time is the right time to be with the one you love now. Is it the right time, baby? Is the right time to be with the one you love? Oh, the right time is the right time to be around the one you love now. Now what do they say? Baby! All right. Wrapping it up. One more. All right. Well, guess what? You get to participate, even you at home. All right. It's real simple. Once you go out of here, and even you people at home, you can always take your light with you. All right. Now, the simple song is "This Little Light of Mine, I'm Gonna Let It Shine." Got it?
Yep.
I'll start it off. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I can't hear you. This little light of mine, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. You all sound so good. I know you're singing at home. Come on, this little light of mine. Whoa, I'm gonna let it shine everywhere. This little light of mine. You promise? I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Next verse says, everywhere I go. Come on, y'all. Everywhere I go, yes, I'm gonna let it shine. Make sure you do. Everywhere I go, whoa, I'm gonna let it shine. One more time. Everywhere everywhere I go. Yes, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. One more verse, this little light, come on. Oh, this little light of mine, this little light, I'm gonna let it shine. Make sure you go out, this little light of mine, make it shine, y'all. I'm gonna let it shine. Show somebody now, this little light of mine. Oh yeah, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. You're wonderful. Make sure you let that shine. Let that light shine. Thank you so much for having me. Let's make this really simple. Thank you so much, Terry Garner. Thank you. Mr. Rollins Ross.
Hallelujah. Thank you so much, Athene Wilson. Thank you so much, Rollins Ross. And such a stirring and soulful evening. It was exactly the kind of warmth we all need in this chilly, wintry night. We're filled. We're absolutely filled. Thank you for braving the elements to be here with us, and we sincerely hope to see you again. I also want to say thanks to Sharon Kennedy and to Bill Hager for sharing their own storytelling souls with this audience, the audience out there. Kudos to Yvette Wilkes and Bill again on the technical side, and to our sponsors, the Cummins Foundation, Ken and Maura Krause. Ken is here, half of the dynamic duo, and the Medford Arts Council for their continued support of the WMCC and First Fridays. Join us again in January for another edition of First Fridays Words of Music. We'll be exploring the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with the city's annual MLK event celebration committee, and more details are to come. Good night, be safe, and have a great weekend.